nation, kingdom again in his kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in diverse places. Nation shall rise against nation.
All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. An ambulatory plane carrying pediatric patient crashes in Philadelphia. Again, this is a crazy story of who's even on it, and I almost thought, gosh, by the story here, it's almost like you can't touch it in 9 out of 10 ways. But I will tell you, the video of it, which again shows a horrible event, is available over on our website. Highly recommend you go over there and pop it in for a second, because this is nuts. This thing essentially came down into a mall just 3 days after this whole instance with a commercial jet smack dabbing into a Black Hawk helicopter. Now, after doing some research about, this kind of plane or this kind of jet, it looks like it doesn't have the capabilities. Like, nobody could really autonomously fly something like this. But I did find something that was pretty interesting. This Avidyne announces an LPV upgrade for the Learjet 55C. Now, I don't know. This thing says that it does one-touch departures and, this and that. I know that even the Learjets must have some sort of autopilot, and this essentially says that it allows it to land on more runways that have GPS-based and LPV approaches. I don't know what the heck that means. But to you pilots out there, I would love for you to tell me, take a look at this and say, does this thing, adding this $90,000 addition to your Learjet, does this, make your plane more connected? Could somebody screw with that, hack it? The only reason I ask is because of how crazy this thing looked. Now, they say it was almost 30 seconds after a takeoff. So what's nuts is the data, the flight radar data, show it essentially taking off. And what, some believe happened is it inverted, and maybe he tried to pull up facing the wrong way, ended up drilling him right down into the mall. And because it is a Learjet, it's got two jets on the back, it was going bam, almost like a bullet. So this thing smack dabs right into a mall, and it is absolutely everywhere now. Everybody's going to be talking about this, almost forgetting about the Black Hawk / commercial jet. It said that a medical transport jet headed for Missouri and carrying 2 people and 4 crew members crashed in northeast Philadelphia on Friday night. Pennsylvania's governor and the company that owns the plane confirmed. The plane's owner, Jet Rescue, provides global air ambulance services, confirmed Friday night that 6 people were on board, including the 4 crew and pediatric patients and their escort. At this time, we cannot confirm any survivors, Jet Rescue said. Meanwhile, Governor Josh Shapiro said that he's offering all Commonwealth resources as they respond to the crash, which happened at a busy intersection near Roosevelt Mall, an outdoor shopping center with dozens of stores and restaurants in the restaurant neighborhood of Roundhurst. So what a crazy thing. I mean, if you were at a mall and all of a sudden a jet crashes right into the intersection. Heck, there might have been people at that stoplight or pedestrians crossing the street. I mean, they tell us every day that, you can cross the street and get hit by a car. I mean, my mom always told me, you never know how long you're going to live. You can walk out in the street and get hit. So treat every day like it's your last. Well, certainly crazy if your life was ended this way on the ground by a Learjet. Very, very insane. We're going to talk about this and much, much more. We're going to talk about war because there's a lot that just popped up in the last 24 hours. And, of course, we've got the perfect distraction. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough.
Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famine and earthquakes in diverse places. Nation shall rise against nation.
All right, so where this happened is I mean, it's right in the metropolis. I mean, it really is insane how this was around everything. This was around strip malls. This was, I mean, literally, there just tons and tons of shopping centers and restaurants. It was right in the thick of it. So if you're from this area and, you know, this is something that you either saw or caught or have video of on your Ring doorbell cam, let us know. I would love to see, you know, the craziness. Now, with something as sensitive as this, you know, we can't show you that, but we have attached it over on our website. It is very freaky to me, though, that, you know, obviously people are going to be sensitive about the kind of things that were on it. It was a woman, Dex, it was a woman from Tijuana, correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Is it was a child, an under 18 female, is all we know. Could be a young child having a life-saving procedure done in Philadelphia on a mission that was, I think, granted or paid for by somebody. Apparently, Jet Rescue, though, is based out of Mexico. Flew the Baseball Hall of Famer David Ortiz to Boston after he was shot in the Dominican Republic back in 2019, and was also involved in transporting patients critically ill during the CV days as well. So they have a history, but their history is they're based out of Mexico. And my understanding was this flight was going to Missouri for a fuel stop and then going on to Tijuana.
And as far as, you know, as far as like the situation here, very odd. And Dex, you said you have a friend that had a similar thing with a plane. It wasn't a Learjet, but where he kind of got caught in a situation like that.
Yeah, so it was a scenario where they were flying a jet, T-jet, training jet, and they got disoriented, and they were inverted, thinking they were right side up, and pulled up, and instead slammed right in the ground, which just made me think, when you look at, because when you watch this video, guys, most people think it's a missile. It looks like what you would think is a missile because this plane is coming in full speed at, you know, a little bit more than a 45-degree angle. So, and it's just, you've never seen anything like that. Typically when a plane crashes, it's either falling, you know, descending in a different way. If it hasn't fallen to pieces, it may be descending, but it's not usually coming down like that, and especially 30 seconds after takeoff, which was typically it's on its way up. So in my mind, I thought it was on its way up, full throttle, and something happened to the plane causing it to invert, so that all of the flaps, the levers, the pull-up that the pilot is doing is now pushing it straight to the ground. And 30 seconds is not a lot of time to react, which a lot of people are speculating something mechanically went wrong. Some are even suggesting that, you know, because it's a medical plane, there were oxygen tanks that may have had an issue or explosion or something on the plane. And then the last thing I want to mention is it was raining there. The weather was bad. The cloud cover was extremely low. So when you watch that fireball, it is extremely bright because of the clouds. You can see everything, and it looks so massive. You can even see the streak of the plane coming down because you can see everything through the clouds. All the light is amplified with the low-level clouds.
And where my, you know, tin hat wearing self comes from, I'm like, so they have a blip of flight radar that only lasts 30 seconds. And I've always wondered, and you guys that are flight radar followers and people that are constantly sky watching, could, just technically, in some other event, if the U.S. Gov or any government really, if it's their radar system, something like that, if they needed to, could they alter that system at all? Could they add in something after the fact? Or would you know that it was added? Or if it was delayed or something like that, like this 5 minutes after it happened, all of a sudden the flight radar thing shows up or something like that. Or were people easily able to see that, yeah, this thing had a flight radar taking off and then boom, it's all of a sudden gone. To me, that's a very short blip that almost nobody, even if they were watching, probably wouldn't have caught, that it was just popped open and then done, you know? Also, obviously it looked very, very crazy. Dex, go ahead. Are you there, Dex?
Oh, yep. Sorry. Had a technical issue. Look, here's an interesting one. Here's your chance in chat. Just said, Philadelphia Eagles are playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Suddenly there's a plane from Philly and Kansas that have gone down. So the one that was in D.C. was flying in from Wichita, Kansas, and now we have the one leaving Philadelphia.
I thought
coincidence.
I thought it was, even when it was just the Kansas thing, I was thinking Kansas. You know, what do we talk about Kansas the most when we're talking about anything? Why does Kansas pop up all the time? What is your first thought that comes to your head? In mine,
mine, it's the center point for an EMP. But
yes,
that's just what
exactly. I think about how that's, everybody talks about Kansas as that sweet spot for an EMP. And then the Philadelphia thing, as far as this goes, it's like it seems like the same cities just have the most insane news. We cover so many different stories from Philadelphia, from Kansas, surprisingly, from Chicago, from New York, from LA, and many from my home area of Seattle. There's just like these places where just crazy stuff happens, and Florida, of course. There's no beating Florida, man. All right, and then, by the way, thank you. And I missed a comment yesterday, and actually that was a really good comment, and I'm surprised I missed it. It says continuity of government training at AI nuclear training in New York. Dex, didn't we cover that already? I know that it was yesterday. They commented that. Mast 33XX, ST33L.
I know we covered the nuclear incident training or exercises they were doing in New York. That was just happening.
So, can wait, the what training? Yeah, I think
the nuclear incident.
Yeah,
training.
So that might be what we've actually covered. If so, we have a show on that. But can you make sure that there's no other? They specifically said AI and nuclear training New York. So I don't know if there's something popped up, but we do cover all of those drills. If you want to know about any kind of big drill where they're practicing for anything, including end of the world scenarios, like when New York did an asteroid drill where an asteroid supposedly hit New York and they tried to evacuate all 9 million people, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to all. Ryan Murray, I wanted to say thank you the other day. You did a super thanks on the show. Again, thank you for so kind words. Thank you again. I appreciate that. Thank you, and thank you. And thank you for watching for years. And then Jay Marie, thank you so much. I appreciate you as well. Crown Jewels and Tracy E. 888. Thank you. And then couple new members. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Jeff. And then Neil Nelson, again, thank you. Chicken soup is also good. Oh, yeah, I've had my share. And then let's see here. And I think that was another one, too. Oh, and then Stephen Click, thank you. Oh, you don't have to do that. Oh, I think it's just the system. I don't know. I think it's because it's automated. That's funny. Why do people say 1999 instead of 20? Because 1999 sounds better. I've always known that. It always makes
you think.
It's the
UI.
Yeah, it's the UI, but it always makes you think that you're spending $10 less, right? Because people naturally round down. And then let's see here. Let's go to the next story. We've got fighter jets scrambled from Alaska and Canada as Russian warplanes spotted in the Arctic, NORAD says. Now remember, the Donald is trying to grab Greenland. There's serious talk about the U.S. even grabbing land at the same time that almost every one of our adversaries is doing the same. And then, of course, you have the talk of the Panama Canal and the Gulf of America, right? But now we've got these incidents happening, and now they're increasing. A combat air patrol of American and Canadian fighter jets was scrambled this week after multiple Russian warplanes were spotted in the Arctic. The North American Aerospace Defense Command said this Thursday, marking the latest military incident to unfold in a region that is drawing increasing scrutiny. The Russian aircraft, which remained in the international airspace, was not seen as a threat, but 88 military planes were dispatched to monitor their activity. They came in numbers, too. They were bouncing out with a fleet. NORAD said in a statement 2 Canadian CF-18 jets and 1 refueling aircraft were launched from the Canadian NORAD region, while 2 U.S. F-35 jets and 2 refueling aircraft tankers were launched from the Alaskan NORAD region. The Alaskan base will also dispatch 1 E-3 Airborne Warning and Control System plane, or AWAC, which the Air Force says can detect, identify, and track enemy forces far from U.S. and NATO county boundaries. Now, doesn't the E-3 do a bunch of other stuff? Dex, isn't that like a nuke sniffer? I thought that was
it's kind of like that. It's that plane that goes up and can yes, it's similar to the Doomsday plane in the sense that it flies up, but it goes up high and has a lot of radar capability, and it has early warning systems and other things like that. So yeah, but I mean, look, this is not normal. Okay, when you read that back again and you think about, we've seen Russian jets fly near Alaska, and we scramble to F-15s or 2 F-22s or 2 whatever, a couple of jets, and that's it. This was an entire fleet. This was 3 refuelers. This was a big deal. I don't know if maybe they just had a long way to go, but it certainly it begs the question, like all of those planes going up for just a couple of Russian aircrafts that were in international airspace, that seems a little bit odd compared to all of the other times we've reported on this. And it's also different, too, because it's coming from both Canada and Alaska, not just Alaska, which is what we've seen those all the time. We cover them all the time when they happen.
Yeah, I in the 7 years I've been covering stories like this, I've never seen them respond. In fact, I've never seen them do the fleets like this. Like, what I thought was weird is that each had their own refuelers. Like, they were ready to go for, indefinite. Like, wherever they were going to go, they were going to follow them. That almost gives them the message, like, we're ready for the long haul here. Wherever you're going to be, we're going to be next to you.
And it wasn't just that, Adam. Several hours after that, NORAD scrambled 2 F-16 fighter jets from Alaska to Greenland. So to move more forward posture, as they call it. But, I mean, that's a lot of air power flying around all of a sudden, just for a Russian aircraft in international space.
And then, Dex, do you want to go over Japan scrambles? You have Japan scrambling as Russian bombers fly nearby seas.
Exactly. So in the, I can't remember, it's the Sea of Oshtok and the Sea of Japan, there was Russian military bombers and fighter jets were flying over. So now Japan is scrambling fighter jets after the Russian planes. And, of course, they're in international water, but Tokyo raised the issue of the military flights with Moscow through diplomatic routes, but also they put their jets up to, sort of monitor them and let them know that they were right there to protect themselves against them. Now, mind you, there is this tension between Japan and Russia over disputed islands, just like there are with, Japan and China, Taiwan and China, and the Philippines with disputed islands, and even Vietnam with disputed islands in China. So all of those disputed territories there cause a tension between them, but Japan and Russia have certainly had their fair share of it. Yeah,
and as far as them responding, It said that they also released a video of two Tupolev 95 aircraft escorted by Russian fighter jets conducting what it called a regular flight that lasted more than 8 hours. All flights by Russian this is a direct quote. All flights by Russian Aerospace Forces aircraft are carried out in strict compliance with international rules on the use of airspace. It's sort of in the same light that the ships, like the U.S., every time they go through China or Taiwan or any area that is contested, they say, well, in the strict use of international waters and the freedom of navigation. But they always say the same canned lines. But the odd thing is how these are happening in these huge kind of bursts. And I just wonder, when they're looking at this and responding to this, wondering if this is going to be more when it happens. And then, again, so you've got lots of scrambling going on. And before we move on, I want to remind you guys, make sure to go check out EMP Shield if you haven't. This is a device that will not only protect your devices, but you can also protect your cars, your trucks, motorcycles, boats, generators. Not only gas generators, but also solar generators. You can actually get them for the Energy Flex 1500 and Flex Tactical. This is a device that can also protect your home. If you're going to wire one of these into your car, it takes less than 10 minutes. Red to red on your battery, black to black on your battery, and green to ground. Same company has outfitted agencies like DHS and DOD, and now on the DEMSO team helping the Texas grid protect itself. But again, we're still vulnerable. And until that executive order that the President Don did to harden up our grid is done, then everyone needs this. And if everyone had it, we would not even have a problem. If every single power source had this, then we would be good. But as far as we know, we don't. So if you don't want to be stuck at home or stuck at work, dozens or even hundreds of miles, if you live here where everybody has to live 200 miles from work to frickin' live, then again, I would highly recommend having this on your car. Go to marfuglenews.com/EMP and make sure to use the code MARF. You're going to get a huge $50 off discount per device. So that, again, matters, especially if you're trying to outfit multiple cars or your family cars, kid, wife, daughter, whatever it may be. Again, marfuglenews.com/EMP and make sure to use the code MARF. Thank you guys for doing so. You're also supporting independent news at the same time. We are on our own. And then Ukrainian media outlet leaks alleged Trump plan to end the war. So, Dex, do you want to go over what leaked and what happened here?
So apparently, it's not confirmed, but the outlet is claiming that this is the plan that came over with the envoy, the Trump envoy that came over to work on such a thing and get started on potentially getting peace moving forward. But basically, they said it would start with a phone call or a meeting, actually, between Putin and Trump sometime at the end of January or early February. So that hasn't happened yet. So that could maybe be next week if it really is moving forward. Then it would follow up with meetings with both Putin and Zelensky, which I think Putin said he won't meet with Zelensky. So we'll have to see what comes of that. It then calls for a ceasefire by Easter, which will be April 20th. It then says Ukraine would withdraw troops from the Russian Kursk Oblast. And then it says once the ceasefire comes into effect that a peace conference will begin hammering out the actual details. The plan calls for the deal to be reached by May 9th. And then once the details of the agreement are released, Ukraine will be instructed to end its martial law and mobilization, which means Zelensky would lose power because his term as president actually expired in May of 2024. And he used martial law as the justification to continue his position and actually not hold any sort of election there. So that would be an interesting, it makes you wonder, like that's going to be really interesting if that's true and how that, when that gets lifted. But it also says that Russia is going to keep the territory they have that they've already claimed. So all of that land, Ukraine would have to cede it to Russia. And
it makes you wonder about any other country. I mean, The other martial law that we saw was in South Korea. Still, no one talking about that. The South Korean president declared martial law for under 12 hours, and they voted him out, and then he had 120 soldiers protecting his palace, and they made him sound like a Kim Jong-un, but the guy wasn't. Everything we've ever covered about that president, that he was not only respectable, but he was westernized politician, that their system is very, very modern. It's not like, they're not like North, right? They're an ally of ours. They have very high-tech, very, very, very high-tech institutes there. They're doing some crazy, crazy stuff in South Korea. Advanced technological advancements there. So how in the world did it look like just something out of a third world country where you had to have them go in and essentially, their soldiers versus their soldiers, and they went in and arrested him? And it was like, he wasn't at the end of his term either. I think he was the shortest lived president because they pulled him out so quick. But it makes you think, too, about like if a martial law was declared, it's what they claimed would happen with Donald last time in 2020, that he would declare it and he would just never give up the seat. Some people claimed it for Barack. Some people thought that JB would do it, right? But what if this did happen here, right? We saw kind of a glimpse of this in the movie Civil War. They actually had the third-term president. A lot of that alone, that little statement basically assumed that maybe it was a second-term president or somebody. It almost hints towards Donald, right? What if second time one didn't get it, but then got in the third? Like it's some sort of eerie prediction of what's about to happen. Or that, they stayed in after martial law. So if this really did happen in real life here in the United States, imagine the craziness. And it's just nuts that they're there. And of course, Zelensky, the guy who gets put out of power the second that they, stop declaring it, their office denied the peace plan is authentic. So and the thing is the peace plan could be authentic. That just doesn't mean that everybody has agreed to it or that both sides agreed to it. I don't know. It doesn't say very specific things about what's going to happen to that land. So I guess we will see. And then China building world's largest military command center, 10 times bigger than the Pentagon, which is, that's pretty insane to say. As far as they're building a new military command center near Beijing that is 10 times the size of the Pentagon. U.S. intelligence officials have said satellite images of the base, about 20 miles southwest of Chinese capital, show a 1,500-acre construction site that experts suggest could house reinforced bunkers to protect the country's military top brass in case of a nuclear war. When complete, the facility, nicknamed Beijing Military City, is expected to dwarf the Pentagon, the U.S. Defense Headquarters, which is known for its world's largest office block. The images obtained by Financial Times suggest major construction of the project begin in 2024, as the People's Liberation Army gears up for its centenary in 2027. And that centenary in 2027, it's very odd that every prediction from our military members and some of the high-ranking military, again, in public, have come out and say that we are, what was it, not Mike Minahan. Was it Mike Minahan? I think it was Mike Minahan. One of the guy who is basically in control of all of the U.S. Army cargo said, prepare for war with China by 2027. It actually makes a whole lot of sense. But again, we're thinking about the dates we think matter, not the dates that maybe matter to them. Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, has repeatedly warned that he intends to annex Taiwan, by then posing a major threat to the U.S., which relies on Taipei for its supply of microchips, which there's a lot going on there as well, because now there is going to be tariffs not only on Canada, Mexico, all of this, but there's also going to be tariffs on Taiwan and China. Everything is happening very fast. And all of those that said, they were high on hope that there wasn't going to be a war, I think you're quickly going to be re-narratived into there's going to be a war, but it's a just war that we have to do because we're not going to take it anymore kind of thing. We're not going to take it anymore kind of war instead of a war that started for the rich fat cats in the military industrial complex. So I bet you're going to start seeing reasons why we have to go to war, because if we don't, we're going to lose our freedoms. That's at least the narrative I think is about to start coming out. And again, Dennis Wild, the former head of China's analysis for the CIA, said if verified, the new complex signaled Beijing's intention to develop its advanced nuclear warfighting capability. So maybe, I guess maybe they could wait another 2 years, right? But how fast time has been flying, that's a very scary thought. And then thank you, Bill Fortenberry. Thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Stephen Click, again, thank you for the support. Says the Exalted Lamb, I made a video the other day named iPet Goat 2 Solved. Says a bunch of crazy stuff starts right after Super Bowl. Gosh, well, it seems like in that time of the year, there's always crazy stuff going on. Seems like usually the Super Bowl kind of distracts us away from all of the crazy stuff. In fact, there's been pretty much a huge war story the last 3 or 4 years that comes right around Super Bowl. So, I mean, pretty solid guess. As far as building this huge building and all of that, I mean, they're also building nuclear silos. They're hoarding gold. They're hoarding gas. They're hoarding food. Dex, what do you think about them building this massive, massive facility, military city?
It's part of their destiny. They want to be the biggest, baddest, and better than America, largest, global superpower ever. And they're not going to stop. So if they think that they look far to the future and say, hey, we're heading down this path to be the biggest, then of course they got to have the biggest military complex. It's not just a game of, who's got the biggest toys or the biggest things. It goes hand in hand with, who controls and wields the power, whether it's storing the gold, having the largest navy, being able to produce military gear faster, being able to innovate technology and AI at a better rate than any other country. Any of those things, all of those are the measuring sticks by which they're going to, gain their superiority. And this is just, sort of the fruits of the labor, as well as the visual proof when you see this monstrosity, I guess, that they're building. It goes hand in hand with them being this global superpower.
And I don't know if you guys, it mentions in here the Chong, I think I'm saying it right. Am I saying it right? Yeah, Chongbao Island. As far as all of if you remember all of the Spratly Islands that we have covered since the inception, the Spratly Islands, which I got so many comments before any of them existed, they were starting to shape up and they were digging with those trawlers that they if you weren't following back then and you know about the Spratly Islands, they took these super sand vacuums, picked up the bottom of the seafloor and then sprayed it out. That's literally how they did it. They vacuumed up the seafloor and sprayed it into one spot and basically built up these islands. Now, some of the islands had a little bit of a start. Some of the islands had a raised kind of features. The kind of islands where you would roll by on a boat, hop out on a little piece of grass, and then it's just nothing around, right? They would build up these islands to the point where there was enough to then do airways and barracks and living quarters and SAM sites and all of this. And back when I said that I believed, because back then the headlines said, oh, they're doing it for scientific research. They said that they were doing them for weather research, which also gets me because the whole balloon thing, every little thing they've said, the lasers scanning Hawaii, oh, they were doing it for weather research, all this BS. Almost everything that they're doing for war, they say, oh, it's weather research. But people then said, oh, well, they're drilling for oil out there. That's why they're out there. I knew right away. I said that those are going to be bases. They're doing a forward operating base, just like we have Guam and others that, these really strategic points that they were going to turn this into. I got so much criticism back then, and I was just giving my educated guess, right? And then as it came on over the year and then a year and a half, then it was like slowly, you had some of the first stories come out of them saying, you know, China, you have to turn around. This is Chinese land. You know, 2020 did a special where they were flying a plane and they listened to China basically telling them, you get out of here. This is China. Now they are actually building nuclear bases out there, or these this base, and expanding their nuclear weapons on these little bases. Now, I don't know where Chongbao is compared to the rest of the Spratlys, but they're essentially building up islands with all of these different capabilities, which you don't see anybody else doing. I'm very surprised by that. Now, the U.S. already has so many bases around the world, and we have just such a huge grasp on the world that many people feel secure with what we have. But China is not going to sit at number 2 forever, and it is very clear that they are trying to go for number 1. People say that they're going broke. Well, it just came out recently that our experts actually say that they believe they were lying and that they are doing way better than they thought. So, you know, the whole world is shoveling their money into China's mouth. It's crazy. You know, almost as many billionaires are made in China as they are here. And all of those billionaires have to have some sort of golden rule or golden contract with CCP. So a lot of that money is being funneled right up to the top. But yeah, the command center. Dex, do we have a picture of what they were saying? Because it didn't load. The picture of the land, the satellite images or whatever. Is there actual public facing pictures that we could look at?
Yeah, there are. Let me grab one.
Okay, we'll show that, and then we'll move on here, because we're actually, that's talking about how it's 5 times bigger, or 10 times bigger, 15 times bigger than the freaking Pentagon. We're going to go to our next story, which is Pentagon employees connected to Chinese DeepSeek servers for days before the block, which you probably didn't even know about the block either. They were they essentially said, whoa, you can't be accessing DeepSeek in Pentagon servers, which is pretty stupid. How many of these people went through an IQ test? I don't know. So we'll pull those up here in a second. All right, let me see here. Thank you.
The top link.
All right, perfect. So, yeah. What a weird looking... Jeez. Okay, now I get why they're calling it Military City. So you can see they're creating this... I mean, it looks like a city. I was thinking it was going to be like one giant building, but essentially they're doing a sprawling military headquarters. And you don't do that unless you're thinking about going into a major war. You also don't do half of the other things that they do. So, Dex, go ahead.
We have a Pentagon City too, right? So I think they definitely want to piggyback off that name for sure. Pentagon City is like a mallish area right outside the Pentagon with, you know, it's basically the town right in front of the Pentagon, but it's called Pentagon City.
Huh. Well, so as far as the Pentagon, I've never been to Washington D.C. and gotten a chance to tour all the. Have you been to Washington D.C. and did a tour of all these places? Can you go in the Pentagon or no?
I've been to the Pentagon. I didn't go inside. I went to the memorial on the outside. And I've been to Pentagon City, which means I went into a mall. I'm sure it's bigger than that to the people that live there, but yeah.
It's crazy. You can see, probably recognize that angle, right? Okay. And yeah. So Dex, why were our Pentagon people? I mean, was this kind of stupidity? Why would they be on their work computers connected to this thing?
Okay. I mean, it blows my mind that this is actually a story, that the IT and the just the standard security practice of anybody in the DoD is like they can just install whatever they want. So they installed DeepSeek. And for those of you that didn't catch this video we did, we talked about DeepSeek when it was made news by crashing NVIDIA's stock value by many hundreds of billions of dollars. And that was a big deal because of what they did with the technology. But the scary part about it is all of the data, at least with the apps that they have, is going back to China. It's being stored in China. The AI is China, all of it. And you've got to be very careful if you're going to use it. I would not even recommend using it unless you're just testing things. I would never put your personal stuff in it. I'd never do anything like that. Why the DoD said, hey, let's install DeepSeek on some of our systems and start using it. And they basically literally said that the Defense Department security teams, as the connection to China wasn't clear to them. They didn't realize there was a connection to China with DeepSeek. It makes no sense. But apparently there was many employees that had connected their work computers to the Chinese servers to access DeepSeek's AI chatbot. And there's no telling what may have come from that infiltration. It's now since been blocked. You can't, anywhere in the Pentagon, you can't connect to the China servers. They blocked it. But before they blocked it, these people installed it.
I think the team's got to go in there and find a few of these people. But I don't know. I would think that they're Pentagon employees. It just shows you how kind of much faith we have in these people.
All they had to do was read the privacy policy. That's all we did. It was the first thing I did when they said it was the #1 app in the App Store. I went and installed it. Or actually, in the process of installing it, I went and clicked on the privacy policy and I read it. And the first thing I saw, owned by China. Where's your data stored? In China. And it even explicitly tells you that. Like, why wouldn't they just at least look at that basic information? It blows my mind that as somebody at that level of importance would just willy-nilly ignore that type of information when they're installing things at the DoD.
Like, did they skip that part? Did they just accept everything, right? I mean, they had to accept the terms of service. The terms of service said that it actually tracks your keystrokes and keystroke patterns. These are Pentagon employees that went through probably five interviews to get their jobs, probably have master's degrees. Gosh.
All sorts of security clearances.
Now, could there be a backdoor in DeepSeek? From an IT standpoint, was this dangerous not just by getting information that they're putting in it, but could this have upstream grabbed anything?
It's possible. The actual code, a lot of the code is open source, so you can download it. So to that extent, I would think that it would be made public quickly. That's one of the benefits of open source is whenever there are vulnerabilities or backdoors or things like that, the whole public can, and when I say the public, it's not like you and me, but it's, other white hat hackers, if you want to call them that, will be
people that should be at the Pentagon.
Yeah, they look at this stuff and they raise flags immediately and say, hey, here's a hole, or don't be careful of this vulnerability, and then they fix things. So to that extent, I would be a little less worried. But things like their app that's in the App Store, I mean, that's coming from them. That's not necessarily open source. And you have no idea what's going on there. The only trust is that Apple or Google is doing their part to validate and make sure there's no backdoors in the code, which, they say they do, but they may not catch everything. They can't catch everything.
They don't. We've read stories of horror stories of stuff that was on Google Play and on their App Store. They had to take off several things, didn't they?
Oh yeah, unfortunately the Google Play Store or the Google platform I think is a little bit more vulnerable, obviously, to the popularity as well. But yes.
Was that like a kind of a smuggy Apple comment?
No, I was trying to hold back. Sorry.
But the App Store is better though, right? As far as the Mac Apple Store.
I've never had a virus on my phone.
So if you guys don't know, I've always been Android and Dex has always been Mac, or Apple, right? So, and I'm thoroughly convinced that Apple is definitely better, but I don't trust either one of them. So,
oh yeah, I don't trust either one 100%. I just, there's a lesser of two evils, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it may change from day to day.
The thing I hate about the Apple thing though is if all the cool stuff happens when you basically get everything Apple, and everything Apple is everything money. Like, it is insane. Everything is if you were to get into the whole like ecosystem and have a smartwatch and all that stuff, it's like a Samsung smartwatch is $200. Apple is $600. Samsung tablets $200. An Apple tablet is $800. It's just like a laptop is $200. I mean, pretty much, yeah. Those are cheap ones, but even the cheap one, it's always like $1,000 or $2,000 difference in the computers. It's just nuts. And you pay for that. I guess you pay for that coolness, right? But yeah,
A lot of software engineers go behind the scenes there to make it all work. Costs more money.
and some of them even probably print their own $2 bills. And then Iran secretly building nuclear missiles that can hit Europe. So, mind you, that we've talked about, of course, that there's possibilities, and I even think, and I think, Dex, you've said the same. So I keep commenting about the whole fact that they keep telling us that Iran is this close and this many ounces away from completing the first one or this one or that one, or they have this much nuclear fission and all they need is this. I have thought for a while that they've already had nuclear missiles, especially when they show off these underground bunkers of just missile cities, right? And then when you see something like this, you just wonder. Iran is developing nuclear missiles with a range of 3,000 kilometers based on designs handed to the Islamic regime by North Korea. The Telegraph can disclose. The National Council of Resistance of Iran, which has previously exposed details of Tehran's secret uranium enrichment facilities, which has shared information on how the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are expanding their weapons programs. The exiled opposition group says that the two sites, camouflaged as communication satellite launch facilities, have been used to rush the production of nuclear warheads. They are both under the control of the Organization for Advanced Defense Research. It's funny that it's called SPEND, the regime's nuclear weapons arm. It says the Iranian mullahs are masters of lies, deceptions, and evasion. For over 2 decades, they have used negotiations and the West's leniency as a means to advance their nuclear weapons program, threatening global peace and stability. Representative NCRI told The Telegraph, Tehran has never been as weak and vulnerable as it is today. The desperate Iranian regime is thus speeding up development of nuclear weapons. Now is the time to hold the regime accountable for internal perishings, regional warmongering, and nuclear weapons development. So going back to what I talked to somebody who serves on a submarine, to be honest, it was a marketplace sale, and they ended up being I ended up selling something to them from Marketplace, and they ended up picking up, and they were a submarine. What do you call a submariner? A submariner? I mean, what do you call
submariner?
A submariner. And they basically said that, they can't say about anything. When they're underwater, they can't tell you where they're at. They can't tell you much of anything. I asked, hey, do you think that we're going to go to war with China? Quickly says, he goes, no, we're preparing to go to war with China. We're preparing to go to war with Russia. He goes, but we are going to go to war with Iran or in the Middle East. And it makes me think, like, there's so many more people saying that that Iran and that the Middle East is going to happen. It makes me think that, yeah, that would make sense, especially with Israel, the whole thing that they just did. This whole peace process somehow falling apart, which it always has and it always does, some event happening, because even going back to the 7th, these events, obviously there's super weird things going on in the background. But with Iran, this could be the trigger to all of this. This could also be the trigger to get the U.S. involved, other parties, because Iran is now teamed up with Russia, teamed up with North Korea. And if this is at all true, that they're getting nuclear technology from North Korea, then I would think that everybody is in trouble over there. And we just had Donald say that they are immediately building an Iron Dome type system for the U.S., that they needed to start immediately. What did he go into? What meeting? What did he hear that he immediately came out with the solution for and said we need to build an immediate Iron Dome system for the U.S.? People really think we're about to do land grabs, build a system that defends us, grab Greenland, grab Panama, grab this whole area for national security, and we're not going to war? I think it's crazy. Maybe this is why. Maybe this is why they're doing this whole, Iron Dome system type of thing. What do you think, Dex?
Well, look, if we were going to try to regime change or even go to war with somebody like Iran, what would be the first steps we would take? Well, we would try to remove as much power as they have. So where is their power? Their power was in Lebanon. Their power was in the Strip, and their power was in Yemen, and of course their power was significant in Syria. Well, all of that has been attacked, and they have basically been crushed back into some regards, especially with Syria. It's a major blow to Iran. So if that's the case, and you sort of say, well, if the day was going to come that they were going to go to war with them, what would they have done? They would have done those things. Well, those things have happened. So it actually makes a lot of sense when you especially know that Israel is dead set on removing the regime as well as removing their ability to strike them with any significance, especially something like a nuclear weapon. But them adding massively long missiles with 3,000 kilometer ranges on them is a big deal. Doesn't mean much to Israel because they've already got missiles that can reach Israel, but it does mean a lot to the rest of Europe that can be hit, whether it be Ukraine or Romania or any of the other countries, Greece, etc.
Yeah, and also the other idea that many of us have would happen is that the U.S. would not be involved in this war immediately, that you would have things going off all over Europe or with the Middle East, and then some event, some Fantastic Freddy event or something real, something that, either way it would be real, but some event happens to the U.S. that gets us popped into it almost immediately. That's the easiest way to... Sorry. That's the easiest way I think that this would go. It's history repeating itself. It's something that we can see in the patterns.
Well, and certainly it's been a target of Israel's this entire time. And the nuclear part, I think, plays, whether it's true or not, it certainly plays well to the public to say, oh, there's this threat and we can attack it. And we saw them attack it the last time Israel did the missile strike. They said they went in and made a significant dent in their capability to launch rockets and even some of their nuclear capability that they thought they were building. So, even if... even without that, if you just take on face value the fact that they keep telling us they're days away or months away or weeks away, or they've already built it, this nuclear power, that gives everybody sort of the reason. It's like the remember in Iraq, the WMD, it's like the excuse for why we need to go take Iran out, why the civilized Western world needs to do something about Iran. And, that will always be there.
And I will say, you'll have... because either people will just believe it, and especially if it comes out of Donald's White House, there's many things that could happen. The Donald could get intelligence from, say, one of the other NATO members that is part of these super shady-ass groups. he could actually believe that there are, weapons of mass destructions in Iran, which that's an easy playbook. You've now moved on a generation or two. A lot of older people will remember that. Anybody that was alive 20 years ago, most of all of us will know, like, oh, that whole thing, the weapons of mass destruction again. But when you, that whole thing, you would think that wouldn't work. But 20 years later, I bet it would. And they're not ashamed of doing the same playbook. But then people would either think that the Don is behind that. A lot of people have trust in the Don. Or that he gets fooled by actual, looking intelligence or fake intelligence or bad intelligence from some of these other countries. And he sees a risk for the U.S. He sees something that he needs to protect us. And then he goes full bore into it because he's not going to be the one that, lets us down. It could be purely out of his... That's the other thing that I think that they would possibly try to take advantage of with the Donald. They wouldn't directly try to go up against him in a certain way. They would do it in a roundabout way, so they would leave a situation to where he would want to jump in because of his possible ego to make sure that happens. By the way, his ego is why most of the good things he's done has happened, because he literally does, he wants to be the one that put his name on the piece or this or that. I mean, there's nobody that can really say they have a system like his. I mean, it's crazy. But one thing everybody does know, and I think he's gotten better over the years, that he definitely cares about what people think about him. What do you guys think? Let me know your honest opinion. I know that not everybody's going to be happy with that opinion, but I think that if you're looking from just a straight up tactical view of our current president, how would you take advantage of him? Somebody, you would almost have to set up a situation where nobody's asking somebody to step in, but where he's the perfect one to do it. Before we move on, make sure to go check out Jace if you haven't already. Go to marfooglenews.com/Jace. You can get a kit with all of the most common antibiotics in it, as well as you can also check out Jace Daily, which there is a bulk program where you can get a 12-month extended supply of your medications. So if the lights go off tomorrow, you will have a whole year of your meds that you can rotate into your current supply, so you will always have a year. Again, that's a really awesome thing. Check out Jace Daily if you're a caregiver. But the kit, the emergency kit, first I would say get food and water. Food and water is extremely important. You can use other resources we have like marfooglenews.com/prep to get freeze-dried food. But as far as medicines, this is incredible to have, especially if we have a conflict with China. If you could really think about it, if there was any long time that we were without, some of our services, if we didn't have power, if we didn't have hospitals or pharmacies, where do we get our antibiotics from? China. 97% of all of the APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients in them, China. 90% of all antibiotics, China. So, we think that we're just going to continue doing business because we're so financially connected. But you're seeing this country, China, hoard in preparation to be completely taken off the American teat. I don't know how to better say it. Because think about it. If they're hoarding gold, they're hoarding everything else, they're getting ready to be financially screwed over. And why would they be financially screwed over? Sanctions, huge financial tariffs, all of these things being done. They're ready for that. Everybody says they're broke, but yet they're hoarding. I don't get it. But again, that's just my thoughts, and I know not everybody agrees with it. marfooglenews.com/Jace. If you're a military member, please email me your thoughts on all of this. active or retired. You don't need to get in trouble. But if there is something you can tell me as far as to guide me in the right direction, it is what I've asked for years, and I believe that many of you have guided me in the right direction. A lot of the times, if I don't just take one thing from one military member and think of it as fact. Some of the ideas and theories and stuff like that, I might think that's interesting. But when I get something from military members, say one's in the Navy, one's in the Army, one's in the Air Force, or if I get 4 or 5 that are scattered over a couple months, totally different people, then I start to give it credence. At that point, if it's something that I can share, I will. So if you are active or retired military, let me know. Shout at me. Tell me if I'm wrong too. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not above making corrections. If there's something I make a super uneducated guess on, then let me know. Not above corrections. And the fact that they're hiding this third pilot is, I guess the first thing people want to jump to is this person, what is the person, right? Say it is a female, but I'm sure people are having their guesses. If this was some sort of unqualified hire, if we all are on the same page on this. But at the same time, that's like the most obvious here. The less obvious, but more obvious in my mind, is that the fact that this was a PAT-25, or the Priority Air Transport, usually reserved for VIP helicopter. And they're not telling the name? Like, the third person on that helicopter, the family supposedly said, we don't want their name out, and both Dex and I have never run into this in 7 years, where the family has the right to say, no, we just don't want their name put out. I've never heard of this existing. I would think that it's an adult soldier, and they would have had to sign off on this to decide if they put out their name or not. Maybe if they can't be underage. So how does that even work? What if the soldier has accolades that they would have wanted out there, but then their adult family says, hey, don't put their name out. Then how do you even know that the person perished, right? I guess personally tell friends and family. Dex,
that'll leak. That'll leak right away. As soon as you tell friends and family, they're going to tell their friends and family, and somebody's going to leak it, and it will get out.
So is somebody
how tight
out there?
Are they really going to keep this?
Yeah. So is somebody out there just telling friends and family that, like, oh well, they're still, they're still serving. Oh, they got another 2 years left, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's one of those hard things to keep under wraps. So maybe they're just hoping that it will go away, or maybe they're hoping that when it does finally come out, that everybody will be on to the next topic, and this topic will be stale, and it won't be so hot for them. I think the concern they have, if it's really true, that there's this third person, was the pilot and is a female, and the family's holding the name back, it's probably because they don't want all the finger pointing that's going to be coming directly at them, and potential shame that goes along with that, because everyone sort of is assuming it's the helicopter's fault. This was the actual pilot. They were training. They only had 500 hours versus the other people that had thousands of hours or more. It looks like it's the helicopter's fault. It doesn't look like there was a mechanical problem. At least that's the early, armchair quarterback's view on it.
I've been teaching my 18-year-old how to drive. I can't imagine teaching a young person how to fly a Black Hawk helicopter. Like, oh my goodness. How many of you guys have taught a teenager how to drive? Raise your hands in the chat. Speaking of which, let's pop over here. Thank you. Make sure to go over and thank your mods, by the way, if you haven't already. Lots of awesome people. By the way, because of the fact that we have not been able to use Restream, we're going to we're finding an alternative. We almost had one. We're not on X. We're not on DLive. And then all of my surgeries popped up. So we're a little behind on trying to get it back up. But because of that, I haven't been able to show chat as much. So we will have that back. We're going to have, again, I would love for you guys to be a part of this too. I'm going to figure out, we're going to actually figure out how to get some of the other things on here too. I want to highlight some of your responses because some of you guys have some of the best comments in the world. Thank you, everybody that made it tonight. Again, make sure to go check out your mods. They are awesome. They're always down in chat. If there is someone here, again, that is modding, usually they can answer any question about the Foogle fam. All of them have been mods for years. Bobby Sue is probably the newest. And again, make sure to thank her as well. Ilea, Trinity, Wages, of course, CJ, Bones, Lee Sarhall, Rip Curl Readiness. Rip Curl, I don't know if you've been showing up, but I know for about a month there, man, you were nonstop. So thank you so much for showing up and supporting. So thank you. Thank you guys. I love you. Be safe. Again, Dex, thank you so much for your service tonight.
Much love. Great job, brother.
And again, remember, make sure to check the website. You have a full bibliography of every single article, tweet, video, picture, document that we have shown you here today. We did a short over on all of the helicopter stuff. Also, an update on the help. The official narrative they're saying is basically, well, I'll let you go over there to see it. And then make sure to share us out with your friends and family if you can. To sum up the night, I would hope that most of you have food and water planned. If you are not seeing this image, I hope that you come back for the next show, because I promise that it's going to start to come clearer and clearer what is about to happen. We saw country after country start doing their land grab and making it public. Now that the Donald's in, we literally have our own land grab that's in the process. At least that's what's being said. So we'll talk about that. And again, next show, make sure to be there. Thank you guys. Love you. Be safe. Be prepared. And Marf out. Again, have a good night. And it is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro. If you're in the chat, just stay there. You'll be ported over. Otherwise, just click up in the corner.